You don't have an anxiety problem. You have a permission problem. You've been waiting your whole life for permission to stop explaining yourself, and no one is ever going to hand it to you. You have to take it. Stay with me for the next few minutes, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why your mind does this, what it's costing you, and the 3-step discipline that shuts it down for good. Think about the last time someone questioned a decision you already made. Maybe you changed careers. Maybe you ended a relationship. Maybe you simply said no to something everyone expected you to say yes to. And the moment that question landed, "Are you sure about this?" something in you activated. You felt the pull, the urge to justify, to build a case, to explain in detail why your own life makes sense. You weren't just answering a question. You were defending a verdict, as if you were on trial for the crime of living according to your own judgment. And here's the part that stings. You do this even with people whose opinion shouldn't matter. A coworker you barely know, a distant relative you see once a year, a stranger's comment online. None of them hold any real stake in your life, yet their raised eyebrow is enough to send you into a 3-paragraph explanation nobody asked for. This isn't a personality flaw. It isn't weakness. It's a mechanism, an old one, running quietly in the background of almost every decision you make. And once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. You'll notice it in meetings when you over-justify a simple choice. You'll notice it in group chats when you add 3 extra sentences to a message that needed one. You'll notice it in your own head at night, rehearsing arguments for decisions no one is actually challenging. That constant, invisible negotiation, that is the real problem, not the decision itself, the endless defense of it. 20 centuries ago, a man born into slavery became one of the most influential philosophers in Western history. His name was Epictetus, and he built his entire philosophy around a single, brutal distinction. Some things are within your control, some things are not. Your judgment, your effort, your actions, your character, those belong to you completely. Other people's opinions, their approval, their understanding of your choices, those were never yours to control, no matter how badly you want them to be. Most people live as if this line doesn't exist. They pour enormous energy into managing something that was never theirs to manage in the first place, how they're perceived. And they starve the one thing that was always fully within their power, how they act. Epictetus called this confusion the root of almost all human suffering, not the disapproval itself, but the belief that disapproval is something you're responsible for preventing. Now here's where it gets interesting, because this isn't just ancient wisdom. Modern psychology confirms it with remarkable precision. There's a concept in social psychology called sociometer theory. It proposes that your self-esteem functions like a gauge, constantly scanning your environment for signs of social acceptance or rejection. This gauge isn't a personality quirk. It's ancient hardware. For most of human history, being rejected by your tribe didn't just hurt your feelings. It could end your life. No group, no protection, no food, no survival. So your brain built an alarm system, a sensitive one, built to fire at the faintest hint of disapproval. Because in a tribe of 40 people, disapproval was genuinely dangerous. You are no longer in a tribe of 40. You are not going to be exiled into the wilderness because a stranger on the internet disagreed with your opinion. But the alarm doesn't know that. It fires anyway. And every time you over-explain, over-justify, over-perform your reasoning, you are feeding that alarm. You are teaching your own nervous system, that disapproval is, in fact, an emergency. There's a second mechanism working alongside it: negativity bias. Human brains are wired to weight negative information far more heavily than positive information. One disapproving comment can outweigh 10 compliments in your mind, not because it's more true, but because your brain evolved to treat threats as more urgent than rewards. Missing a threat could get you killed. Missing a compliment never did. Put those two mechanisms together, sociometer theory and negativity bias, and you get a mind that is constantly, disproportionately braced for judgment that, statistically, almost never carries any real consequence. The Stoics didn't have the vocabulary of modern neuroscience, but they identified the exact same trap. They simply called it slavery of a different kind. Not chains on the body, but chains on the will, forged by other people's opinions. Here's what almost nobody talks about. Every time you explain yourself to avoid discomfort, you're not neutral. You're making a deposit into a very specific account, and it isn't a good one. Psychologists describe something called cognitive dissonance, the mental tension that appears when your actions don't match your beliefs. If you believe your decisions are sound, but you keep acting like they require a legal defense every time someone questions them, that mismatch creates friction. And your mind resolves that friction the easiest way it can, by quietly lowering its confidence in the decision itself, just to make the discomfort go away. In other words, the more you explain yourself, the less certain you become, not because the decision was wrong, but because the act of defending it signals to your own brain that it might be. This is the same mechanism behind self-trust erosion. Every time you make a promise to yourself and abandon it under pressure, even social pressure, you're not just missing one moment. You're teaching your mind that your word bends easily. And a mind that learns its own commitments are negotiable starts doubting itself in every other area too. This is why people who chronically over-explain often describe a strange, creeping anxiety that has nothing to do with any single decision. It isn't about the choice they're defending. It's the accumulated weight of 1,000 small surrenders to opinions that never should have had authority over them in the first place. None of this changes through willpower alone. It changes through repeated, deliberate practice. Small, specific actions that retrain the alarm system instead of arguing with it. Here are 4 steps you can start using today. Step 1. The ownership filter. Before you explain any decision, ask yourself one question. Do I owe this person an explanation, or do I simply feel anxious? These are 2 completely different situations. A business partner affected by your decision may be owed context. A stranger with an opinion is owed nothing. Learn to separate obligation from discomfort, because right now, your mind treats them as the same thing. Step 2. The one-sentence rule. State your decision once, calmly, without a built-in defense, not 3 reasons stacked on top of each other, not a preemptive argument against objections that haven't even been raised yet. One clear sentence. If someone pushes further, you don't escalate the explanation. You simply repeat with the same calm tone. I've thought about it. That's a complete sentence. It requires no sequel. Step 3. Practice productive silence. After you state your decision, resist the urge to fill the silence that follows. Silence feels unbearable to a mind wired for approval, because silence could mean disapproval is coming. But that discomfort is exactly the signal you want to sit with, not escape. Every second you allow that silence to exist without rushing to fix it, You are proving to your nervous system that disapproval, real or imagined, is survivable. Step 4. Track the wins, not the reactions. At the end of each day, don't ask yourself what people thought of your choices. Ask yourself whether your actions matched your standards. This single shift, measuring yourself against your own principles instead of other people's reactions, is what the Stoics called living according to nature, meaning living according to your rational nature, not the shifting, unpredictable opinions surrounding you. None of these steps eliminate the discomfort immediately. That's not the goal. The goal is exposure, repeated, controlled exposure to disapproval, until your nervous system finally updates its threat assessment and realizes what should have been obvious all along. You can be misunderstood and still be completely fine. Something interesting happens once this becomes practice instead of theory. You stop rehearsing conversations in the shower that will probably never happen. You stop drafting 3 versions of a text message to soften a decision that needed no softening. You stop feeling the small, private exhaustion of managing everyone's perception of you all day, every day, without even realizing you were doing it. People around you notice the shift before you fully register it yourself, not because you become colder or more distant, but because your decisions start carrying a kind of quiet finality. You say what you mean once, and you let it stand. And there is something about that steadiness that earns more respect than any explanation ever could, because explanation signals uncertainty, while calm brevity signals conviction. This is the deeper truth the Stoics kept returning to. In different words, across centuries, authority over your own life was never something you needed to request. It was always yours. You just spent years asking for permission you already had. The people who move through life with quiet authority were never the ones with the best arguments. They were the ones who stopped needing to win them. You don't owe the room an explanation. You owe yourself consistency. Save this video for the next time you catch yourself explaining what nobody actually asked you to explain, and come back to it the next time silence starts to feel unbearable. That's exactly the moment this discipline is built.